Quiet, peaceful, and honestly one of my favorite places in the country. It's not a well-known campground about 15 minutes outside of Pittsfield, Massachusetts, right in the heart of the Berkshires, so it's still close to town and everything we need while still being remote and private. I'm including this so that you know how normal this place is. It's beautiful. Families come out here often to camp. I've been coming here since I was 8 with my family, and we've never had anything bad happen here. Until now, that is. I'm a 19-year-old girl, and a few of my friends and I decided last week that we wanted to go on a camping trip since we're all back from college for the summer, and we've missed each other. There's 6 of us overall. Me, Hannah, Tyler, Jacob, Eileen, Ben, and Yona. The names aren't real, obviously, because I want to keep everything anonymous. We're not totally sure what to do about all this. So, we've been here for 3 days. We got unpacked, set up our tents and campfire. We spent the next 2 days messing around and enjoying ourselves, swimming in the lakes and talking around the campfire, and hiking on the trails. We have 2 more days here, and today we decided to go exploring off trail to see what's around. There's not really a danger of getting lost or anything because there's a big fence surrounding the campground and it separates it from the national park. We figured that we would take a map, keep track of where we were with Tyler's fancy GPS that he just got. And Ben had a stomachache from some expired granola bars and decided that he was going to wait for us back at the campsite. We packed up our backpacks with plenty of water, snacks, and emergency supplies. We tied our shoes, locked up our stuff, said bye to Ben, and headed out from a smaller trail off the largest lake. For the first 2 hours, we didn't find anything cool or interesting as we trekked deeper into the wilderness. We found some cool trees, a little den of some sort of small animal, a huge boulder that we got a cool picture on top of, and a little cave near the boulder that wasn't very interesting. As we got deeper into the woods, Eileen got a little spooked after she thought that she heard somebody calling her name. We all thought that she was being ridiculous as there are 5 of us out here. There's bound to be echoes off the trees. She eventually dropped it and just laughed it off. Tyler wandered off when we had stopped for a snack, and a few minutes later came running back and told us that he saw somebody running around the woods. We all thought that he was messing with us, and we started to screw with him for it. It was funny, but he brushed it off. We heard a couple of distant bells, which was a little weird, but we figured somebody had a dog out here. About 3 p.m., we finally found something interesting. There were these cool structures that were made out of sticks and stretched into circles, like 2 to 3 feet in diameter, on the ground and hanging from trees. We also found a few nest things around the bases of trees, like the sticks and branches had fallen in a circle pattern on the ground. Eileen, of course, was freaked out and wanted to go back. But Jacob and Tyler had found some wooden stone steps carved into the ground like they do for some hiking trails on a hill nearby. We also found some old wood railing, like what you would find next to incline trails. We figured it was part of an old hiking trail, and Eileen decided that the weird stick things were from people who had found the old hiking trail. We agreed even though we weren't sure. We kept going and eventually found the best and worst part of this trek. We found an old abandoned shed. Apologies for not having a real picture of it. but we didn't bring our phones, only our satellite phone. We're not stupid. And my little Polaroid didn't have any more film for it. It was about 10 by 15 feet, so pretty big for a shed, but not big enough to be a house. It was miles away from anything and relatively well maintained. It wasn't like a super old and decrepit ruin like we would expect to find. I guess it was a part of the old abandoned trail. And we were so excited that we had found something cool and immediately went around to see what was inside. We found that it was locked from the inside and the windows were all nailed shut. Yona found one of the 3 windows only had one nail and it was sticking halfway out. So we pried the nail out and Tyler climbed inside to let us all in. He clambered around inside and then unlocked the door with a bit of effort. The door swung open and he beamed at us, proud of his work. We all clapped him on the back and came inside with him. It smelled terrible in there. A mix of rust, dead leaves, and something sour. We looked around and the boys turned their flashlights on since the windows didn't provide a lot of light. Inside there was a gross wooden chair, a pile of dusty and nasty looking blankets, a wooden table that was turned on its side, a few small bones. We thought that they were from animals, and tons of leaves and dirt on the ground. There were handprints and footprints everywhere, and probably a couple of needles. So we definitely thought that some hobo had been sleeping here. Tyler disagreed and thought that some sort of cryptid had made a nest here. Eileen punched him and left the shed, and of course, we ripped into him for being a dick. He said that he was serious and said that the bones and how it was locked are really creepy. He said all of the stick sculptures were weird and not something that a person would do. He wasn't afraid at all and said that since we're on the grounds of a well-known and popular campground, and how it backs up into a national park, they're all signs of something living here. He then changed his mind about it being a cryptid and decided that it was probably some creep trying to be weird and scare anyone who would happen to stumble across it. And we continued to explore, still calling Tyler the dick that he was and joking around and messing with him to lighten the mood. We sifted through the blankets and leaves and found a few half-burned candles, a used-up emergency flare, and a few burnt matches. And then I found the notebook. It was one of those little mini composition notebooks that you can find in office supply aisles. It was dirty and scuffed and had frantic writing written inside. I called out to my friends and we started going through it. It was really freaky and it read like a diary from a horror movie or something. We all got pretty scared and Jacob threw it at me to take it back to camp with us. We didn't feel safe going through it here. So we all got the heck out of there. We tracked the 3+ hours back to our campsite, visiting the bathrooms, and went back to hang out some more. It was around 7 or 8 by the time that we all settled back into camp for dinner. Ben had gone into town and gotten some food for us, so we quickly forgot about our adventure and enjoyed the rest of the night. Which is where we are now. It's about 10 p.m. and we're all sitting around the campfire. I brought my laptop to go through the pictures that we had and thought that I would try and transcribe the notebook so that everybody could read it at once and then we could talk about it. So here goes. I've added some punctuation and fixed the grammar so that it's more comprehensible. Page 1. My name is Cassie, I'm 14 and I'm camping with my family at the campground. There are 5 of us. Me, Mom and Dad, Levi, and Daisy. Well, we've been here for 5 days, I think. I lost all of them yesterday. I don't know what to do. I don't know if anybody will find this. I don't know where I am or where to go. I'm so scared. I don't know what to do. If somebody finds this, you have to know what happened. We got here 5 days ago and it was all fun. We set up our tents, went swimming, hiked, and had fun. It was supposed to be a great summer trip. Just the family. We went exploring in the woods 2 days ago. Dad knows this campground really well and wanted to try some off-trail hiking. We brought water, we brought food. It was fine and it was going well. We were out for a while and we found these weird stick spirals everywhere. Sticks around the trees. Page 2. And then we found footprints, and we heard sticks cracking out of sight. Levi touched one of the spirals and got a rash a few minutes later. We saw an old cabin in the distance but decided to not check it out in case it was dangerous. We went back to camp. It got really dark out and we couldn't see the stars or the moon. Dad said that it wasn't supposed to storm. Then we went to bed. We heard footsteps outside, but Mom and Dad didn't see anyone. Levi's rash got worse and Mom put ointment on it. The footsteps lasted all night. I thought that I heard breathing too. The rest of them couldn't hear it. A few times that there were bells, just short little rings, like a dog bell or something. I went out to pee late that night. I saw a shape in the woods. I was so scared. It looked like a person in a hoodie. I told Mom and Dad went out with a flashlight, but he didn't see anything. Page 3. They said that we could leave in the morning. The night lasted so long and none of us slept. The sun finally came up when we got to pack up our stuff. There were footprints all over the camp in the gravel and the dirt. And there were more stick spirals. Daisy started to cry and Mom put her in the car. It was foggy out like it usually is in the morning. The sky was overcast. We took a while to pack up. Levi noticed that we couldn't hear any birds or cicadas. Everything felt muffled. We packed up and Dad left to go down the road to check out. He was gone for hours. Mom started to get scared. We tried calling the office, but just got a busy signal. Daisy was crying. Levi and me went to the lake a few feet away. We sat there for a few minutes. We said how weird this was and we just wanted to go home. We wondered where Dad was. It got cold and so we went back to the car to get our jackets. Page 4. Mom and Daisy were gone. Mom's phone was in her seat and there was no service. Levi started to cry. We yelled and yelled for Mom and Dad and Daisy. There was no answer at all. No echoes, no birds or bugs, no wind. I think my ears were ringing. It sounded like bells again. I didn't know if it was in my head or just super faint, but it was getting dimmer out. I looked at my phone to see what time it was and to try to call my Mom and Dad again. It was 8 p.m. We had been yelling for my mom and my sister for 4 hours, or we had been at the lake for a very long time. I started to cry too. I was so scared, but I tried to keep myself together for my Levi. We sat in the car, ate some food, and tried over and over again to call Mom, Dad, and the office. We tried 911 too, but there was always that stupid busy signal. I made us some beds in the car with sleeping bags and told Levi that we would try again tomorrow when the sun was up. Page 5. Maybe there was a storm or something down the mountain. I heard the footsteps again that night. All around the car, pacing and pacing, but when I looked, there was nothing there. I cried as quiet as I could and prayed to God that somebody would find us. Around 2 a.m., the wind started to blow again. It smelled really bad outside and the footsteps got louder. I gave Levi my headphones and I made him play his music. There were sounds outside, like wailing, whistling, like nothing that I've ever heard before. It sounded like whales underwater, but slow and far away. I told myself that it was coyotes or something. The sun finally came up, and when we got inside it was freezing but so humid. It smelled awful, like ozone and rust and sharp cheese, and dead leaves and dirt. The fog was still everywhere and we couldn't see past the tree line only a few yards away. Page 6. All the stuff that I had put outside of the car for us to sleep was gone. There were footprints in the gravel and dirt again outside the car, and spirals were marked in the dust on the side of the car and in the dirt on the ground. Not just sticks anymore. I told Levi that we were leaving. We put on our jackets and put some stuff into our backpacks. We started to walk down the path to walk the 2 miles to the entrance and the office. We walked and walked. Levi was crying and I was too scared to cry. I kept seeing someone out of the corner of my eye. I didn't tell Levi. We yelled for our mom and dad and Daisy, and we yelled for help that we were lost. No one heard us or said anything. It got foggier and foggier. We couldn't see 10 feet in front of us. We kept our eyes on the road and down. I tried to play road trip games to keep Levi occupied. Page 7. At some point, our phones had stopped working. They just stayed at 2:17 p.m. They wouldn't unlock and the battery level wouldn't change. We knew that time had passed because we got thirsty and hungry as we walked and continued on. God, I can't do this. I can't stop crying. I can't breathe. We kept walking for so long. I told Levi to stop and turn around because I had to pee. I went and took the couple of steps back to him and he was gone. He wasn't anywhere though. His footprint stopped where he was standing and I screamed and screamed for him. I looked everywhere but I couldn't find him. Page 8. I lost it and just ran down the road. I cried and ran into where I thought would be people. But the road turned into woods again and the fog started to clear just a few steps past the trees. I tried to look around but it was just trees everywhere as far as I could possibly see. I had just taken a few steps into the forest but it was all that I could see. It was like I had been teleported where I had just started walking again. It started to get dark. I had been walking for hours at this point and my feet hurt and I had blisters. My back was sore and my face was raw. It got darker and the sky turned purple, like sunset behind the clouds. I heard the sticks snapping again. The air was still cold, but it was unbearably humid. It was dusk and I was right back to where we were 2 days ago. The stick spirals, the bent trees, and I saw the cabin again. Page 9. This time I went to it and hoped that this was some sort of crazy, realistic nightmare or a prank or just something, and this was familiar. The door was open and there was a table and chair inside, and leaves everywhere and dirt and stuff. I locked the door, sat down, and got this notebook out of my backpack. I turned on my flashlight and there wasn't enough light outside. I didn't know what to do, so I started writing. I had a few candles and a flare in my backpack, and so I lit the candles. It never got any darker outside, but it's dark in here. I can hear the footsteps again. I don't even know if I'm scared anymore. I'm just tired and I want my mom. I want my dad. This isn't fair. Page 10. There's something outside and it just put its fingers under the door. I can hear it walking. I hear the bells chiming and they're closer this time. My name is Cassandra Rupert and I'm 14. My mother is Elaine Rupert. My father is Kevin Rupert. My brother is Levi Rupert and my sister is Daisy Rupert. We went camping on June 27th. Please find us. The notes end there. I mentioned that we found the used up flaring candles in the shed. I think that Cassie had lit them. We're leaving in the morning. It's almost 1 a.m. and everyone is terrified. Ben is going to stay up and keep watch to keep us all comfortable. And we'll be handing all of this into the Forest Service and the police in a few hours. This is not what I had planned for a camping trip. God, I hope this isn't real. I'm terrified for this family, for Cassie. I have a 14-year-old sister. I can't imagine how scared she must be. We're safe. We made it home in one piece. Everyone went back to their respective homes, and we've met a few times since with both the cops, the Forest Service, and each other. The day that we left the campground, Ben had stayed up all night until the sun came up. We all tried to sleep, but I don't think that anybody slept well. I got an hour or so, but I was tossing and turning and my heart was pounding all night. When the sun had started to come up, it was a normal misty morning. We asked Ben if he saw or heard anything while we tried to sleep, but he didn't notice anything out of the blue. He saw a few raccoons, but that was normal. We packed up our stuff, rolled up our sleeping bags, and packed our backpacks and took down our tents. We piled everything into the cars and did a once-over of the campsite to make sure that we hadn't left anything or anyone. We did a head count and everybody was there. By the time that we left, it was 7:20 in the morning or so. The office wasn't open yet, and so we called the Forest Service and had a few officers meet us there. They met us at the office a few minutes later, and the two officers told us to follow them back to the main Forest Service building a few miles away. So we got into our cars again and told our parents what was going on now that we had good cell phone service to call. We got to the main Forest Service building and all got out of the cars. The officers led us inside and back to a room with a few tables and chairs and a whiteboard. The officers sat us down and had one of us tell them the short version of what had happened and what we had found. Yona volunteered and told them what we knew. We had gone into the woods to hike off trail and then found these weird stick spirals and sculptures. And then we found the abandoned shed and what we found inside. The matches, the flare, the blankets, and of course the notebook. We told them what we read and what we think happened. The officers were worried, obviously, and decided to call the county sheriff and the Pittsfield Police Department. So while they got out here, the two officers grabbed a few more people and asked if we would be willing to show them where the shed was at. We all agreed except for Eileen, who really just wanted to go home. So she went home and the Forest Service called our parents to tell them what was happening and told the cops what we were doing so that they could meet us out there. They piled us into these rugged gator vehicle things. I was in one with Ben and Officer Grady, a nice younger woman. Yona was with Tyler and another officer, and Jacob was with another. So there were 3 ATVs in total. They kept their radios on and were in contact with the Forest Service base and the police. At least I think they were. I wasn't paying too much attention. We didn't have to give them directions to get to the trail where we went in the woods, so we just talked with Grady for a while until we got there. She could tell how freaked out we were, so we just talked about what colleges we were all at and what we were studying. It took about half an hour to get to the trail from the office with the ATVs. We got to the trail around 10 a.m. I think, between all the traveling and the talking and communication. We stopped at the section of the trail where we left it in to the officer at the front. With Jacob, we were in the middle. They stopped to write down the details and send the location to the base and to the cops so that they would know where we were at. After he was done, Tyler hopped up to the front ATV and we all followed their lead. We trusted them to remember where we were going, so the rest of us just kind of chilled and talked to the officers that we were with. About an hour and a half later, we started to see these stick spirals and piles. And Grady whistled and said, "That's crazy. Who would put all their time into doing something like this?" I don't remember how long it took us to get to the shed. I was nervous and my heart was pounding the whole time. Ben held my hand as we got closer and we were both freaked out. As we crested the ridge, we could see the shape. The radio buzzed as the officer at the front, Officer Skagway I think, asked us all if this was it. And Grady looked at Ben and I and we both said yes. Officer Skagway got our confirmation and we kept going. We got up to the shed and the ATVs all pulled around it. It didn't look as scary as I had remembered. I think the notebook and my own apprehension made it out to be worse in my memory. The officers all got out of the ATVs and told us to stay in the carts. We absolutely agreed and stayed where we were at. They went in and poked around for a few minutes while we waited. Ben and I talked about what we thought they were doing and what we thought would happen. He tried to keep it light, but we were both freaked out. Eventually, the officers all came out and Officer Skagway grabbed his radio again. He called the base and the cops and told them our exact location and what was around and how to get here. And then he told us to go back to the base and wait to give our statements. So we all piled back into the carts and went back to base. It took us a few hours to get back, so I think we got back around 3. I was exhausted by the time that we got back though. Our parents were there and we were met by a few Forest Service officers and police officers too. My memory gets a little fuzzy here because I was so tired, but I'll try and get everything right. They took us back into the room with the tables and chairs and sat us all down. They had us recap what we had already said before and then split us up to talk to us individually. Why, I'm not so sure. I'm not a cop. Yona went first and took about 30 minutes. Jacob went next and took a little bit longer. Then Tyler, who didn't take as long, and then it was my turn. 2 cops, a detective woman, and another male officer, I think, I don't know how that works, led me into a separate office and sat me down. They were nice and offered me some water. They asked me what exactly happened from the day before to today in as much detail as possible. So I told them. What we did the night before yesterday wasn't important, and then what happened yesterday. I told them that we had gotten up around 8 and had some breakfast around the fire. A few of us went to the bathrooms for a shower. I stayed as I had showered the night before and hung around with who was left. Yona, Jacob, and Ben. We goofed around and teased Ben for not feeling well. He had brought some homemade granola bars that looked nasty and only he ate. The others got back around 9:30 and we talked about what we wanted to do. We decided on off-trail hiking because Tyler had brought his fancy GPS and we wanted to try it out. So we packed up and headed out. You guys already know what happens next, so I won't say that again. We went to the woods, hiked, found the shed, and then came back. We got back around 8 p.m. and unpacked our stuff. Ben came back a few minutes after we got back with some sandwiches and a few things to cook over the fire. Hot dogs, marshmallows. We goofed around and then I decided to take a better look at the notebook. So I grabbed a lantern and my laptop and got to decoding. I took pictures of the notebook and started to write it down. I was really nervous the whole time and really scared that it was real. It didn't seem faked, which was what bothered me. I sent the finished document to everyone so that we could all read it at the same time. We were all thoroughly scared now. We talked about if it was real and what we were going to do because it's super freaky and it all started at night. We determined if anybody had touched anything or messed with anything, and nobody had, thank God. We were all freaked out, as I said, so Ben volunteered to stay up and keep watch for us, and then we would pack up and leave as soon as the sun came up. And that's what we did. The cops thanked me for my time and assured me that they would look into it, and if it was real, do everything in their power to find this family. They led me back out to my friends. Ben went in last. After we were all thoroughly interrogated, they took all of our information in case they needed further contact, and then we went home. I passed out and I slept all night, only waking up the next morning when Detective Yelchin called me to give me an update, as I had asked to be kept in the loop. Hi Hannah, this is Detective Kara Yelchin. Are you doing all right? Hi Detective, I'm doing okay, just catching up on sleep. Oh good, I was worried about you guys. I got an update for you on the Rupert family. I can't tell you much, but they are indeed missing and we are currently putting together a search party to go look for them. Federal investigators are getting involved with us and the Forest Service, and we're doing everything we can to find them. God, this is so awful, but thank you for letting me know. And that was that. I'm putting together a more complete update with news articles and what the police said and what's happening. It should be out soon. All I can say for now is that they haven't been found yet, but there's hope that they will be soon and that they're still alive. And they've found a few leads. Stay safe out there, guys, and stay tuned. First off, all of us except for Eileen have returned to our respective colleges for our sophomore years. Eileen dropped out for a semester because of the incident. Ben and I have started dating. I know that some of you are a bit suspicious of him, but I can assure you that he's an amazing guy and is totally normal. Everyone back home has been on edge since the first events, and it's only gotten worse. Several families have moved and my parents are greatly considering doing the same, especially after what's happened recently. So anyway, 2 weeks after my last post, the active search for the Ruperts was called off, but the investigation is still ongoing. The cops and the feds searched every square inch of those woods out for a 10-mile radius and found a few disturbing things, but no sign of the family. They found an older car abandoned around 4 miles north of the spot where they disappeared, well off the roads and in a strange place. It had been there for several years but was a newer model, which was extremely strange. It also had a tree growing through the middle of it, as if the car had just phased into the tree. A few days after that report was released, a few boys who I won't name from a neighboring town decided to trek into the woods to see the car for themselves. And yeah, you guessed it, they didn't come back. Their parents were frantic and a new search was put together and they combed every inch of the woods once again. They didn't find anything until they got within the 4-mile radius of where the Ruperts originally had disappeared. They found more of those spirals, the biggest one being about 10 feet in diameter. There they found what looked like to be human hair braided through the twigs and branches. And I should add that none of the twigs or branches were bent or cracked like what usually happens with wood when you bend it. It was all gently sloping like it was grown that way. So they tested the hairs and found that it was from 5 different people, 2 unknown and the other 3 belonging to the missing boys. There was a panic. People were terrified and had no idea what to think. I didn't even know what to think. At this time, I was still at home, but I hadn't left the town's limits. I'm not superstitious, and I can't even say that I'm all that religious. I tend to try and think practically and logically, but this had me stumped. I don't think people could have done this, but if not people, then what? There were so many individuals involved in the investigation. A curfew was set after the hair had been tested, at least for people under the age of 21. My friends and I were terrified that something would happen to us too. After all, we had been out in those woods. Was whatever was doing this after us too? Did it remember? Things died down a bit after that, as the authorities had set up a perimeter around the scary area and didn't let anybody through. Obviously, the campground was shut down and the national park closed until the investigation could be finished. They combed the area, I think, once a day, looking for anything. And then they discovered a cave system near the old shed. They said that it had been revealed after some storms had passed through the area. The dirt had been moved or something. But I don't think that it had ever been there until now. It wasn't deep or very large, but it was a bit convoluted and labyrinth-like. So they brought in geological teams to study it. They didn't release this part officially. Detective Yelchin told me personally, but they said that it was unlike anything that they had ever seen. There was some sort of magnetic interference or gravity or something or the other. Time didn't flow right when they were in there. They couldn't get a read on their compasses. Their equipment would spaz out every once in a while. They never felt like they were safe there. They interviewed us again and again, asking the same questions over and over as if they expected to get a different answer. But we told them the same thing every time, what we saw, where we went, and what happened. A few pets went missing in these subsequent weeks and then another person. But she came back. I'll call her Leah. She was a bit of a vagrant in her early 20s from a not-so-nice part of town. Somehow she got past the blockade while drunk and disappeared. Her boyfriend had reported her missing. She had her phone on her and they were able to track the last ping to the entrance of the caves. The search was renewed, this time with another place to look. They even brought in some sort of fancy heat-seeking thing in a helicopter. They used this because they knew that she was still alive, as her phone would move around every once in a while. That's what I was told at least. They were able to see everything from bears to chipmunks. They live-streamed this, which was kind of cool, as we saw a mother bear and her cubs and a bunch more wildlife, a large herd of deer, and a few cold spots that they tried not to mention. Basically, they didn't pick up a single human other than the officers in the search team. And then 33 hours after the last ping, they had found her. And I don't know how, but she just appeared at 50-some feet up in an old oak tree. 1 minute, there was no heat signature. Another, there just was. We all saw it. It was recorded and played over the local news again and again. Nothing and then something. So they brought her back and it seemed that she was completely catatonic for a few days. No one saw her and no one heard from her. No updates until she woke up. And she couldn't remember a thing. She said that she was drunk and she'd wandered away from the bar and passed out in the woods, waking up in the hospital. She had no idea that she had been gone for 2 weeks. And the weird thing is she was perfectly healthy. Still had food in her stomach, even her blood alcohol content was still as high as it would have been if she had gone for a day, not 15. It's as if Leah had slipped out of time, returning 15 days later. The whole town just tried to get back to normal. A few weeks passed and we all went to go back to college. Life started to get back to normal. Ben and I started dating, I guess bonding over shared trauma. All of the friends who had experienced this with us were irrevocably made closer. We dove into our studies and the anxiety of our summer had started to fade away. This is the worst part. God, I can barely even bring myself to write this out. I'm nauseous just thinking about it. They found Cassie Rupert. They officially said that her body was found. They didn't say in what condition, but Detective Yelchin told me the truth, off the record, and I was told never to tell anyone, but I just couldn't. They had found her fused in a tree. Her body was fresh, she hadn't been dead for long. Half her body was just inside the tree. Not in a hole, not in a groove like she had phased through the wood. Like the tree had absorbed her. I couldn't bring myself to look at the pictures. A few of my friends did. We were on a group Skype call. But I just couldn't look at the screen. I couldn't do it. I heard the sounds of Jacob vomiting and Yona screaming. I couldn't do it. Ben started to cry. He was with me. He said later he described what she looked like. I didn't want to hear it, but he needed to process it. She had tear streaks down her dirty face. There were scratch marks on the tree, like she had tried to get out. Her nails were bloody and raw. She had died, terrified, stuck in that horrible place. I can't even think about it without crying. Just knowing what happened to her, hoping that she would make it out, and it ending as horrible as that. The town held a vigil for the family. I wasn't there, I couldn't go back. The official report was that she died of exposure several weeks ago. No, recently, not in that way. They found traces of the rest of her family. A jawbone from her mom and the
है। हाँ सर, चलो movement. जैम ट्राई किए